Okay, our agenda today. So we're going to ask why. Why are we upgrading? Is your infrastructure ready? Are you ready? So looking at time and resources from your perspective. Also being prepared. We'll look at testing. And of course, a topic that's near and dear to my heart, we'll look at project management. We'll discuss our promotion, and then please think about those questions you might have, and we'll take those at the end. All right, so poll question number 1. Michael, if you can throw that out there. My slide is stagnant, so nobody can do anything with it, but you've got some poll questions there.
Okay, let me throw that up right now. So you guys should all see that. It's what version of Dynamics GP are you currently using? GP 9 or older, GP 10, GP 2010, GP 2013, or GP 2015? We'll give another 45 seconds or so for you all to answer it.
The anticipation is killing me.
Okay, we'll go ahead and just close this out right here. So we got about 20% running GP 9 or older, 20% on GP 10, 20% on GP 2010, and 40% on GP 2013.
Okay, interesting mix. So 60% of those on the webinar are using a version no longer supported, so that would mean why people are watching. That's good. So here's the question I'm presenting to you now is why are you upgrading, or why should you consider upgrading? And here's some of the key points is Microsoft is no longer supporting your version, and so 60% of you said that you're on versions 2010 or prior. And what does that mean exactly when we say it's no longer supported? So what that means is Microsoft's no longer releasing any more updates. That includes payroll. So if you're running payroll, that's a big red flag because those tax tables are no longer updated. And what's interesting too is I've encountered some clients over the years whereby they think they're updating the tables manually and getting by with what they need, but in the past, and this is not so much now, but in the past there were a lot of things done where I think it was like Social Security, FICA, Medicare, all those things where there was actually code requirements in the background in GP, so updating the tax tables didn't fix it. And so that's one of the drawbacks to not updating your system. So when we say it's not supported, Microsoft simply is they're not updating the code, and if you call for help, they pretty much kind of pause everything and say, we're not supporting that any longer, so ask me a question about a newer product, because they just don't want to address it any longer. New features. So there might be some new features, and if you're on an older version specifically, especially if you're going back to prior to 10, because so many things started with version 10, specifically the security model, and that was a huge one. And then after that, Microsoft has this model of where they even start giving away some features. So there's been software that's been provided for free that you used to have to pay for, but the key is you have to be on a new version of GP. So we want to look at those new features. A lot of people use the opportunity also to migrate to a hosted server, and we hear that word cloud all the time, or Microsoft uses the word Azure, and that's their marketing department saying, hey, we've got a server in a network location, and we're going to call it something, and the marketing department called it Azure. So a lot of people look at that and think, you know what, we've got these servers in a closet somewhere, we're paying all this money to have them sit here, we don't even know if they're backed up right, they could go down at any moment. So people think, you know what, let's move it somewhere, let someone else take care of it, we'll use it, and we know it's always going to be ready for us. Also, there are other people that just like to be on the cutting edge. I mean, we've got 40% of the people on this webinar on GP 2013, and 2013 is a still supported version of GP. But a key feature that's come out now lately is the new workflow, and there's going to be another webinar talking about features, so I'm just kind of, you know, just giving you a little bit of interest here. But the workflow feature in GP has changed dramatically in these last 2 versions, and so they've taken that workflow feature and put it into the core product. You don't need SharePoint anymore. Business Portal's gone. And so what I mean by workflow is you might enter, let's say, an accounts payable invoice, and then GP knows, you've entered an invoice. I know this needs to go to your manager for approval or someone else. And so GP holds on to it waiting for that approval. So that's an important piece to think about when you're on that cutting edge. All right, Michael, I'm going to give you a warning. We've got a poll question coming up.
I am ready for you.
All right.
Okay, so you guys should all see that coming up now. Has your GP system been upgraded before? We'll give just under a minute for you all to get an answer in here. Okay, that could be all the ones that are coming in. So far we have 100% on yes. So I will go ahead and shut that poll down.
All right. All right, so that's good. Everybody has some experience. Hopefully it's been a good one. All right, our next topic is your infrastructure ready? So remember, this is secrets to a successful upgrade. And a lot of times we'll speak with clients and they weren't aware of some issues with their own infrastructure, and so sometimes it delays the upgrade. And so I've got this lovely picture of a very old computer with a cane, and his feet even look like the floppy disk that the government says runs our nuclear warheads. Yes, I was surprised to see that. They're probably on eBay buying the floppy disk because I don't think you can even buy them anywhere. So what's important about your infrastructure being ready? Not only does GP change, but the underlying technology it sits on changes all the time. And so eventually there become incompatibilities. And so we talk about Windows Server, and here that we've got, what, 60% of our attendees on versions that are not supported, and I say probably some of those individuals probably are on Windows Server 2003. Well, that's an opportunity. It's a risk, but it's an opportunity to change because that's no longer supported. Also, too, we're finding that client workstations, a lot of people have hung on to Windows XP, no longer supported. And what's the risk in that? Well, the risk is Microsoft's no longer going to be pushing out those security updates. We've also found that people are getting more progressive and they're going to Windows 10 because there was so much flack on Windows 8. So many people avoided it. And so people are kind of making that leap. They're going from Windows 7 to Windows 10. And guess what? The older versions of GP are not compatible on Windows 10. So people then now are upgrading because now the internal IT departments are looking at that. SQL Server. The newer versions of GP require at least SQL Server 2012. I've heard a lot about SQL 2016 as well, as far as a lot of performance improvements and a lot of new features they're adding in there. So that's another opportunity when you think of upgrading to, let's say, GP 2016 is, gee, why don't we just bring the latest and greatest in? Let's go to SQL Server 2016. Hardware's changed a lot. So even if you stay on premise, in other words, you're not hosting it outside a facility, there are a lot of people who have not gone to virtualization yet. So that's a huge opportunity where you might have a room full of 6, 10, 12 computers. One time years ago, I worked at this public restaurant company, and I was a naive computer person. I walk in the room, and I was all excited, and here was this huge refrigerated room just full of PCs just laying all over the place. It was interesting. But nowadays you can take one good-sized computer and virtualize all these servers onto one, and you can very quickly allocate how much memory or CPUs go to that server and manage that very easily. Your network, you can also look at how does your network performance. A lot of people have those voice over IP phones, and one thing I learned several years ago, especially when I owned my own business, was a lot of times those voice over IP phones where the Ethernet cable comes in and then comes out to your computer, what I've found is those VoIP phones downgrade the network connection and your speed is a lot slower. So we find a lot of people break out the connection, one to go to your computer and one to go to the phone, just one small example. Service packs. Maybe you've got a current up-to-date system, but maybe service packs aren't installed. That's a common issue. And so these are all things to help get you prepared. If you get everything all smooth and running great, you're going to have a really successful upgrade. Michael, guess what time it is?
It's another poll time.
Yes, I like to keep everybody active and involved here, so we've got another poll.
Okay, you guys should all be seeing it right now. It is, what is your role? Accounting/finance, IT, general operations, sales, or other? We'll give a quick 30 seconds for you guys to get your votes in. We got about half of them in right now.
We'll have to put a trick answer in there one day that says, I want a free upgrade. See how many people click on it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and shut this guy down. So far we're looking at 50% from accounting and finance, 33% in IT, and 17% in other.
Okay. Alrighty, so are you ready? Time and resources. We've got, I think this is Russell from the Up movie, as I recall. So he's our Boy Scout, and he's always ready. So after looking at your infrastructure, making sure it's all set, one thing we have to look at what we might call our issues. Maybe you have some support issues with GP. Maybe there's something you've been hanging on to a long time and you've just been meaning to get to it and wondering why this record's still outstanding somewhere, why there's something on your aging report that should be gone. So in advance, you might want to look at all these things, contact us for some support and get all that cleaned up. Infrastructure, a lot of times we find people are running out of disk space and they don't even realize it. And that's really dangerous. So you take a look at all those different issues and be prepared. You want to be Russell there with his Boy Scout uniform. Enhancement plan, well, what does that mean exactly? So when you own Dynamics GP, or for that matter, it's really any business grade product. This isn't something unique to Microsoft, but we have these enhancement plans, and that's a fee you pay annually. And typically you pay that same fee with the add-on solutions that aren't from Microsoft. And this gives you, usually it's access to a website. In Microsoft's case, it's called Customer Source, and you can log in and look at information from Microsoft, very similar to what we look at. There's a knowledge base, it gives you support, but more importantly, it gives you access to all the versions of GP during your plan period. So if you're on GP 2013 and you've got your enhancement plan current, you will have access to either 2015 or 2016, whichever you choose. So it's important to keep that current because it gives you that access. One question we get a lot that's a little confusing is you do get the software, but all services are provided additional because that's through your VAR, your value added resource, and that's us. Microsoft is not involved in services, so you do get the software, but the upgrade itself is through us or through your VAR, and so that is an additional fee. Something too you'll want to take up with your account executive or account manager is if you're coming from an older version of GP, and again 60% of us are prior to 2013, there was a licensing change that took place. And so when you go up to version 2013, there becomes this, it's like a relicensing, and I don't want to misspeak on this, I'm not an expert in sales, but to my knowledge what's happening is they're basically giving you a credit back for your software. It's not a refund, and then you technically rebuy your software in a way from Microsoft, and because it's a whole new licensing and they call it perpetual. And so another way of being ready is being prepared for this perpetual licensing, and what happens there is, if any of you have been GP clients for a long time, you know that you've had the ability, let's say you've had maybe 10 users, and you realize that 2 of these licenses you just never use, and every year you're paying fees, so you think, well, let's cut that back. You need to do that in advance because once you go to perpetual, perpetual means just that. It's on forever. You can't change it. Also, too, there's a moratorium, so if you are going to make any changes, it has to be so much before you go to perpetual licensing. They don't want people just making a last-minute decision and changing things, so you have to plan in advance for that. So that's another part of being ready. A big part of this, too, is your team's availability, and we're going to get into some more of that in more detail here in just a little bit, but it's very important that, yes, we do a lot of the work here, a lot of the heavy lifting, but this is your system, your data, and we very much have the most successful upgrades of when the client team is prepared to spend some time working with us on the project. So we want to make sure we do this at a time when it's not your year end, it's not your busy season, it's not when people are off at trade shows, it's when people can be focused on all sides. All right, guess what? Poll question number 4.
All righty, it's coming up right now. Question is, how soon do you anticipate upgrading GP? 60 days or less, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or not sure yet? We've got a little under half of you guys in right now, so we'll give another 15 or 30 seconds. Okay, that could be the ones that are coming in. So far what we got are 40% on 60 days or less, 40% on 6 months, and 20% on not sure yet.
Okay. All righty. So this is probably the most important slide out of all of these. Testing, testing, and more testing. It's so funny. One time I had this manager and we were chatting about projects and having people do testing, and we were talking about how sometimes people are very engaged in it and sometimes they're not. His response to me was, people will always test. Sometimes they test during testing and sometimes they test when they go live. Testing at go live is definitely not testing, right? The point is, what I'm trying to say is you're going to spend the effort no matter what. And it's much better to be proactive and spend that time in testing, and I'll describe what that is in a minute. Because if you don't, it just ends up being support time and agony later, because then everybody's frustrated. They want to know why it's not working. How come when I click here I don't get something? And not that that's all common, but there are things we need to check. And if they're not checked, it's just really frustrating. So that effort's going to be spent, I guarantee you, and you're much better spending that effort in testing than you are later. So what does testing mean? Well, it's running reports and comparing. That's part of it. So when you're preparing to upgrade, we'll tell you, all right, we're shutting down the old system, the legacy system's closing down, so you want to run key reports. We'll give you a list. That's usually your aging reports, your trial balance. You might want to even do things like, gee, how many customer records are in there? How many vendor records are in there? And then you compare it after the fact. It's very rare we ever have any data get corrupted, but the more complex your system is, especially if you're using something like maybe analytical accounting, we have to be very careful looking at all these things. We want to make sure you duplicate actual transactions, so it's very good that if you have a sample set of transactions that everybody looks at that and thinks, all right, this week, maybe we'll say we'll go back to the prior week. These are all the payables transactions I entered the prior week and all the new vendors I set up. So I'm going to make sure I do that same thing in the new system, in this tested system. And I want to make sure everything's running exactly correctly. And then take notes and report those results. So as people are working on things, if there's anything they're not sure about, write it down, keep a log, put it in Excel. And then we want to make sure that that data gets to us and we work with you together on examining, was this a training issue? Or is this really a data issue? And then let's look at the resolution. And sometimes we could get to the very end and realize there might be something unresolved. And if it's something that's simple, maybe it's the payables check isn't printing right. Maybe for some reason it got corrupted and we just have to recreate it. That might not stop us from doing a live upgrade. We just know we have to recreate it. So we just have to decide what's material, what's not. When should we move ahead? When should we not? The other thing I've seen too, just some advice, is when we do the test upgrade, we have to make sure this timing is accurate in the idea that when the test upgrade is planned, that the team has the time to do the testing, but not only that is when we do the test, we have to make sure that the live upgrade is going to happen in a material amount of time afterwards. In other words, we don't want to do the test and then wait 6 months, and I have seen it happen, and then we do the live upgrade. Well, a lot can happen in 6 months. Maybe the system has had an issue. Maybe there's been a significant change in a report. Maybe the data's changed a lot. Well, that test upgrade becomes invalidated. And it could be a case where either we have to take the risk of upgrading the system anyway, or we have to re-perform the test upgrade. So that's all part of this realistic planning. So I cannot emphasize that enough. All right, Michael, this is your last chance. This is our last poll question.
The final one. Okay, you guys should be seeing it right now. What version of GP are you considering upgrading to? GP 2013, GP 2015, or GP 2016? We'll give about 30 seconds for you guys to get your votes in here.
When does the Jeopardy music come on?
You know, I actually didn't load it in time, but
Oh.
Okay, we got about half you guys in right now. Okay, so what we're looking at is 25% on GP 2015, or sorry, 20% on GP 2015 and 80% on GP 2016.
Okay. So this is my soapbox, or my passion, and I think there's a lot of people that don't understand project management, and I think especially in upgrading, I think there's a lot of people are thinking that, you know, it's kind of like insurance. I have to do it, and I just want to do the bare minimum, and I can appreciate that. It's not a low-cost endeavor. We try to make it as efficient as possible, but project management really is kind of that insurance, that blanket over the whole project, and it ensures that everybody's communicating, everything is done on time, and it all comes in on budget. And so what we call that is our triple constraint, and that's what this colorful diagram is here. And so think of this as kind of almost being a rubber dog's chew toy, right? And you've got a couple dogs pulling on it. And what happens is we've got these 3 key points, and that's at the top is scope, bottom left is time, bottom right is cost, and in the center is quality, kind of pushing equally out on everything. And so what scope is, scope I always describe as really it's like a shopping cart. You're in the grocery store, you're throwing things in that shopping cart, and so scope is everything we're including in the project, everything we're putting in the shopping cart. Time is, of course, the time it takes to do it, and cost is the cost, time times the billing rate, right? So if we ever expand any of these things, and let's say scope doesn't tend to change too much, but on an upgrade project, sometimes we're talking about the time, and that's why I think for a successful upgrade, we have to be realistic in when can we do all this. And if we start stretching out that leg there of the triangle for time, what happens is it also stretches out cost. So all of a sudden now our cost is increasing because we're taking more time. And like in my example of a test upgrade becoming invalidated because it took too long to do the live upgrade, we've now increased it. So we just want to make sure that the project manager is watching all this, keeping you informed that we're getting this done. So guess what, Michael? No more poll questions. But we do have our promotion, and this is the second time we've released this promotion through our webinar series. So time is running out. So basically what we need to do is we're offering you 2 hours for a What's New in GP session, and this happens when a discovery call is conducted and the statement of work is signed by June 30th. So we only have about 3 more weeks left, and it definitely can be done, but that's where you get those 2 hours. In addition to that, the upgrade services must be started between the time the statement of work is signed, so prior to June 30th, and then by August 31st. The only requirement is this is the 2 hours is taken in one session, so we don't want to break it up over a bunch of quarter-hour sessions. And within 10 days of the upgrade being completed, usually we'll do the training prior. If you want this promotion, you've got 2 options here. You can send an email to info@interdynebmi.com and just put in the subject, I want an upgrade. My contact information is at the bottom. That's tom.santoro, not Nicky Santoro, like from the movie Casino, at interdynebmi.com, and I can help you out with that promotion as well. And here we go to the very end. We've got our questions. So, Michael, if you want to monitor that queue.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have too many in right now, but I can go ahead and start with the first. Is GP 2016 available now?
It is available, so it's already there. Microsoft has released it. We are pending any upgrades at this point. In other words, we haven't actually upgraded any yet. We're only installing it on new purchases. Reason being is, one, we're fully testing it. Then Microsoft, or I'm sorry, not Microsoft, but some of the ISV solutions, they're just now starting to release their versions. So an ISV solution would be something like Key2Act, E1 that has Smart List Builder, Binary Stream has multi-entity management. So all those companies are now just starting to release those products.
Okay, great. Another one is, when is R2 going to be released for GP 2016?
Yeah, it's interesting because typically, we get this new version and we kind of have a little bit of a lull and we're not too concerned about it, but Microsoft's getting extremely aggressive with the new feature releases. So Microsoft has told us that R2 should be released by November. So we're anticipating towards year end there'll be a whole new version. Now, one thing I just want to remind people of, if they're waiting now thinking, okay, do I want to do this now, and now I'm hearing R2 is coming out in November? Well, you kind of have to pick your place in the sand, and what I mean is, all right, so November comes up and R2 is released. Well, guess what? We go through this whole rigmarole again, because now all the vendors that just said, oh yes, we're compatible with GP 2016, now they have to go back and retest everything with R2. So if we wait too long, it's kind of like this, we're just putting it off forever. And so you just have to find your time frame of when it's convenient for you and then go with the version that's available, really. Anything else, Michael?
We do have one more, and I think you might have touched on it a little bit, is what ISVs are compatible with GP 2016?
Yeah, I did touch upon that. I guess I always anticipate that question coming up. I think I've heard a lot of people becoming compatible. I know the other day I had actually had a new project that was using Nolan Business Solutions. They've got an advanced bank rec module, and I noticed they already had a release for that. So it's just that's it for now, but they're all coming up very quickly. I think we're anticipating by the end of the month. And I guess too, as a reminder, as people upgrade, a lot of times people will add new users and whatnot, and I'm not aware of all the promotions, but just an FYI to everybody, Microsoft's year end is June 30th, so they typically have a lot of promotions going on, and so do the ISVs for that matter.
Alrighty, well, we don't have any other questions coming in now, so if that was the end of it, we can get out a little bit early today.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate this opportunity to serve you, and looking forward to getting you started on your upgrade.
Yeah, and if any later questions do come up, please feel to reach out to myself, Tom, or your account executive if you'd like to learn more about anything you heard during today's presentation. And on behalf of everyone at Interdyne BMI, we just want to thank you for your attendance and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. Bye.